The Mishnah tells us in the 19th parak of Shabbos, it deals with the laws of Milah. And the Mishnah talks about a halacha that really doesn't apply today. We'll get into it, we'll get some background. We're going to discuss today what happens when, based on the Mishnah and the Gemara assumes it's a suffix sakana, it's a doubtful danger. And you could be machalo Shabbos, you could desecrate the Shabbos. And bisman hazeh, we assume it's not going to be a danger. What is the halacha? And in general, how do we deal with different halachas? Let's say mitzitza and separation of fish and meat. How do we deal with something when the Gemara halacha seems to imply it's a danger? Yet today, the doctors we assume it's not a danger. So let's just have some background on the halacha, then we'll get into the topic more. So the Mishnah says that we know that, the Torah tells us, on the 8th day, we do a circumcision. And the halacha is bayom afilu b'Shabbos. Even if the 8th day falls on Shabbos, Yom Kippur, any day of the year, one does the bris milah. As long as it's the 8th day, it's a milah b'zmana. If it's not the 8th day, then we don't do it on Shabbos. We push it off to the next day. So one of the procedures you do is you have to wash the katan with hot water before and after the circumcision. And from the Gemara we see, because it's an issue of a danger, we want to make sure the baby's healthy. We don't want to put the baby into danger, a doubtful danger. So the halach is you wash the baby with warm water, hot water, before the circumcision and after. So everybody agrees that this is also, the Gemara discusses it in Erevin, and Terelia Machokas Ramban and Balamor, of, let's say someone goes ahead and you don't have the hot water. So it's a Shabbos and we didn't have Gemara. Let's say you didn't have the hot water. So the halacha would be is, you'd go ahead. So if you didn't have the hot water and it was day 8, so that's a machokas Ramban Balamor, whether the Balamor says you wait until Sunday, and the Ramban says you do the bris today, because even though Milah is Docha Shabbos, but Machshirei Milah, the accessories, the preparation for Milah, that's not Docha Shabbos. So the Balamor says you have to be Roas HaNolad, since you're not really permitted to cook up Mevashel, the hot water, and therefore better to wait until Sunday. And the Ramban says, we don't make cheshbonos. The mitzvah is to do Milah on day 8, we go ahead and do Milah. And if we have to heat up hot water, so let it be. So we assume like the Balamor, we don't. But what happens if the water spilled after you did the Milah? So now you have a Milah, you just did, and you don't have any hot water. So if you can, you get a guy to heat up the hot water. If not, you get a Jew to cook up the hot water, because it's a question of the safety, the life of the child. There's a chola mesukan. So that's the Gemara in the Rishonim. So the question is, the Beis Yosef writes in the Shulchan Aruch in the 1500s, that he lived in Sfat in Eretz Yisrael, and he writes that bisman hazeh, we see it's no longer a suffix sakana. It's no longer a danger for the child not to be washed. Maybe it's a good idea anyway, but even today we have septics, antiseptics, but even if you don't have them, the Yosef Karo writes, it's not considered a suffix sakana anymore, and therefore you're no longer permitted to machalo Shabbos. To be dinner Gemara, you could be machalo Shabbos to heat up the hot water. But since Bizman Hazeh, in the 1500s, the Beis Yosef writes that it's no longer suffix sakana, Therefore, he says you're not permitted to be Machal Shabbos anymore. So that's a discussion among the Achronim. Let's say the Gemara calls something a sakana or a suffix sakana, and modern science, the doctors say it's not a sakana. Well, let's say doctors call it a sakana, but the Gemara doesn't. So there's some Achronim who say we'll machmer on both ends. That for sure, if the doctors say something is dangerous, so then you can be Machal Shabbos for it. But what about something Midina Gemara? It says it's a danger, but today medical science has determined that it's not. So those are going to say anyway, you go ahead and you're Machal Shabbos. So Yosef Cairo apparently feels differently, and it seems to be the Pashtus, that you go by the doctors of that time period. That during that time period, it was looked, and maybe it was either Nishtana Hateva. We'll see, like Tosfos writes, like the Gemara, as the Gemara talks about, the healthiest time to eat fish is right before it's about to spoil. So let's say it takes 5 days to spoil. Eat the fish on day 4, right at the end. That's the healthiest. Obviously, Tosfos right, that's ridiculous. Today we assume the opposite. We assume the fresher you have it, the better. So Nishtana Deva must have been, whatever, fish was different, other things happened. So the Beis Yosef writes that we go by what we see today. Obviously, if our doctors say that it's not a danger today, so he says you can't be a Machal Shabbos anymore for washing up the hot water. And certainly, if you can't do it then, certainly today, we have antiseptics, antibiotics, we have other things we give the child to put on the wound. So certainly, the heating up the hot water would not be justified. That's the Shiloh when the Gemara tells me something is a danger. Now the doctors say it's not. So Rabbi Aaron seems to go with the doctors of today, and other Achronim seem to say, well, you go with Chumrah. Yeah, you're not going to ignore what the doctors say today. But if the Gemara calls it a suffix sakana, so even Mizman Hazeh that we think it's not, maybe there's different things we haven't figured out yet. Whatever the reason, if it says in the Gemara, so then that's what we go with also, and therefore one would even be permitted to be Machal Shabbos. Pashtus, we should go by what what's considered a danger today, not what was a danger hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. And in fact, we have another halacha also regarding milah, but we know there's different aspects to the actual mitzvah milah. There's the milah, the cutting off of the foreskin. There's the priya, the revealing the membrane, and then, well, that's the question. So there's something called mitzitza, that you have to suck out the blood from when you do the milah. So the question is, what role then does mitzitza play in milah? Is that an integral part of the mitzvah of milah? Just like you have to do mobile parak, you do milah without the priya, it's like you didn't do anything, or shouldn't say you didn't do anything, you haven't fulfilled different achronim, whether you haven't done anything or you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah in its proper way. So mitzitza, what about them? So the Gemara says, one who does a mohel doesn't do mitzitza, you fire him, you get rid of him. The question is, what's the pshat? Like, you mean someone works for you and they make a mistake, so you fire them? So no, that's not. The issue is, it's mashra in the Gemara because it's a suffix sakana. Because you're putting the child in danger, and that's why you have to get rid of the mohel. So, even though it never says explicitly that the reason for mitzitza is only for health issues, that's the implication. In fact, some point out that no, some have an interesting explanation of mitzitza is part of the mitzvah milah. You have to do mitzitza. The Gemara implies it's only because of health issues. No. Even if you assume today it's not a danger, it's a suffix sakana for another reason. It's a suffix spiritual danger. You become an apikaresh, you become a heretic. Part of doing the mitzvah of mitzitza cures the spiritual. In fact, like the Rabbi Akiva Eiger brings down and other achronim, that the chatikas ha'arlo, when we do the milah, it gives us an opening to learn Torah, and it takes away the effect of the arla. So too over here, mitzitza is part and parcel. There's the milah priya and the mitzitza. And the pashas, the Gemara, even though it doesn't explicitly say it, is that the mitzitza is fundamentally for health reasons, and therefore, if it's not, so some argue that Bisman Hazeh, that since the reason for mitzitza is for health reasons, and since Bisman Hazeh, there's no need to do mitzitza, because we have antiseptics, but we see many Goyim do Mila, circumcision, and they don't do a mitzitza and nothing happens to them. But we see from the doctors that from a health point of view, a danger, there's no need to do a mitzitza. In fact, someone claimed by doing a mitzitza, especially a bepeh, maybe you are putting the child in danger. But either way, the Gemara tells that the implication of the Gemara is it's for health issues, and therefore, since Bisman Hazeh, we no longer have any health issues with mitzitza, it doesn't help us, so therefore there's no need to do it. In fact, that's the Steichemer, right? A whole shtickle on whether we need mitzitza. It concludes we need mitzitza today, and we even need mitzitza b'peh. But that's a discussion among the Achron. Clear what the minhag is that even though we don't assume it's a danger, but the minhag is we do mitzitza anyway, because maybe it's part and parcel of the mitzvah milah. Some want to say maybe it's halacha Moshe Misinai. And then whether you do a mitzitza b'peh, mitzitza b'kli, that's a further discussion. Some Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, the Rav used to say, Rav Soloveitchik, the son of Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, he used to say, I'm much more tolerant than my father. If someone wanted to do a mitzitza b'peh, by my father, he would throw them all out. But I could at least tolerate it. That was many years ago. So today many assume that perhaps with putting the mouth on an open wound, there are issues with herpes. There was a big incident not a couple years ago in Muncie, etc. So therefore, you have among the Hasidish, many still do mitzitza b'peh, but there are many today who insist on mitzitza. Everyone just about does mitzitza, but even though some claim it's not necessary, but we're machmer, we do it anyway, and therefore many say it's enough to do a b'kli. You don't have to do it, you don't have to do a b'peh. And another halacha we find also where the halacha seems to say it's a danger, but today modern science, medicine seems to imply it, it seems to imply it doesn't seem to be, is the issue of having fish and meat together. The Gemara tells us in Psachim that if one who cooks fish and meat together, so it causes davar acher. It causes a very serious illness. Like we say, we don't want to say cancer, we say yeda nachala, or let's say don't call what happened with the September 11 with the World Trade Center, they say 9/11. Certain things are so bad you don't even want to say them explicitly. So the Gemara says davar acher. Rashi writes over there, of course, leprosy, but whatever. Either way, it's some type of sakana. And in fact, so yet today, the Rambam doesn't quote this Gemara. The Rambam does not quote the prohibition of cooking fish and meat together, albeit it is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. But as the Nosei Kalim point out, even if it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara talks about cooking fish and meat together. Here we're talking about today, Benos Yisrael, that the people are even machmer, that we know, and that's the minhag Yisrael, that they have separate forks for fish and meat, not even have the residue. But that's a further chum. That's not even in the Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara only talks about by davar acher. So why does the Rambam leave out this Gemara? That's what the Chasam Sofer, many other point out. The Rambam left out many Gemaras that deal with medicine, because Rambam was a doctor, and he said the Gemara, during the Gemara's time, that's what they thought the medicine of the day was. But Bisman Hazeh, I see it isn't for refuah, it isn't for a health issue, and therefore the Rambam said there is no danger of having fish and meat together. In fact, that's the psak of the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram, one of the classical commentators on Shulchan Aruch, writes, there is no, to Bisman Hazeh, there's no problem of cooking fish and meat together. And in fact, there's a whole discussion how far you take it. You have from one extreme to the other. You have machokas shach and the taz, in terms of kashrus of fish and meat, in terms of batel b'shishim. Do you go ahead? Do we apply bitul b'shishim if fish falls in meat? So some say, well, yeah, it's only a minhag to not to eat meat and fish together, so therefore we could be lenient. So certainly bitul b'shishim wise. Others say no, since it has to do with the sakana, so by sakana we're even more machmer.